You know, so many of these so-called van life channels, overlanding channels, off-road channels you'll see on YouTube, they seem to make everything look rather perfect. You see them with, 1, brand new utensils, 2, everything is squeaky clean, the weather is usually pretty good on average, and essentially no problems. Well, I'm of the opinion any day spent on the road is probably a better than average day. So Leia and I are here at Natchez Trace. She is unhappy because I'm making her stay on her bed. It's okay. And we woke up in the rain. A little unexpected. The sun is actually trying to peek out through the clouds. But anyway, it is lunchtime. I'm going to show you how to make an absolutely epic, super simple, super delicious camp meal with really just some potatoes, some onions, and some garlic. Going to throw a few extra things in there. I'm going to cook this in butter and, check this out, a little leftover burger grease from last night's absolutely insane blue cheese Oklahoma onion burgers. So yeah, so we've got a little bit of grease in there. Again, we're going to add some butter. Seasoning is going to be salt and pepper. It's perfect with just butter, salt and pepper, and the garlic. But I'm going to show you how to spice it up literally with a couple other things. It's going to be really cheap. You can get from virtually any grocery store. So I'm going to get to cutting all this up. We're going to finally chop our potatoes so they'll cook up a little quicker, maybe about the same rate as the onion. Going to dice up our onion, crush up our garlic. These bad boys here, these green onions, we're going to save those for the very end. Now, I'm no expert on veganism, naturally, but I would think this is considered vegan. If you drop the butter, I'm almost certain it's considered vegan or at least vegetarian. So yeah, no meat, don't really need it because I don't have any right now. But if you are of the persuasion who does not enjoy eating meat or does not like to eat meat for any reason, this might be a nice little option for you. All that being said, I'm going to shut up and get to cooking. So watch your fingers if you're doing this. I have a bigger knife, but I'm not going to use it right now. So all I've done, cut in about 1/2 inch slices one way, turned it 90 degrees, cut it in half. Start from the very end of your choosing. Again, be careful. And just rough chop these. Definitely doesn't have to be anything fancy. To something like that. The only reason we're doing this is to, 1, save time in the cooking. And 2, I'm lazy and I don't want to stand there all day, obviously, chopping up veggies. If you run into this little guy right here, little purple spot on your potato, as long as it's still pretty firm, doesn't smell bad, just eat it. It's perfectly fine. Just dipped it into the fridge to get the butter out. I forgot I had about 1/4 of an onion left. I'm going to dice that bad boy up. May save this one right here for another day. I think this will be enough for us because that's going to turn out to be quite a bit of spuds. Now, before I throw the potatoes into the pan there, I want to talk about garlic real quick. Of course, everybody loves garlic, at least you should. A little trick to this is if you're going to be cooking with fresh garlic like I am here, get your garlic ready, crush it, dice it, do whatever you want to do, mince it, put them in a stew. But whatever you do after you have chopped it up or, you know, more or less got the garlic prepped to go, just leave it for about 10 or 15 minutes. The healthy properties, a little thing in here called allicin, essentially that's the good stuff in garlic. So when you let it sit after that's been released, that really reaches full potency. So I'm going to crush this up, mince it up, and then just let it sit for about 10 or 15 minutes. I'm going to show you a little trick on prepping your raw garlic. It's always good to start off with your board a little wet, your hands a little wet, the garlic a little wet, the knife a little damp, and that's going to help the garlic not stick to your hands as much, make it a little easier to work with. So the big problem people have is taking the little husk off the garlic. I said you'll see people doing all kinds of ways, folks. This is just one that I use. The bigger the knife, the better. Again, I'm lazy today, I don't want to get the big knife out, so you'll see why in a minute. But going to use our smaller knife. Cut the little nip off the bottom, little hard part. You can see that on any clove of raw garlic. Cut that off, and this is where the bigger the knife, the better comes in. Normally, I would just hit it with a knife. I wouldn't crush it per se. Some people do that, that's fine, but I wouldn't crush it. I would just use the weight and the momentum of the knife to just crush the garlic just a little bit. because when you do that, this husk will more or less just fall off of there. So I'm going to use the knife. I'm not going to crush it all the way. Do a nice little press, and that husk will just fall off. How about that? Good tip for garlic. All right, now the cooking order is going to be potatoes, onions, garlic, green onions. And yeah, we're going to save this guy for later. It's not about being fancy, people. It's about being functional when you're really living out on the road. And this is why I've used the same little butane stove since, I think, 2008. This thing is pushing about 15 years old. Little cheap butane stove. I love you, buddy. Don't let me jinx you. Got it off of Amazon. Literally, that has been everywhere with me. Like I said, it's a little the worse for wear, but it still functions just perfectly. And in case anybody's wondering, this is the type of fuel this little stove right here needs. It doesn't have to be Coleman, but little butane fuel canisters, look like a can of spray paint. Get them about anywhere, like $2.50, $3 a piece. And they last forever, relatively. So our pan, beautiful burger grease from last night. Thought I had a little bit more in there, so I may add a little bit of olive oil in with our butter, just to help these potatoes along. You know, like I said, you don't have to, but this is non-clarified butter, just plain cheap country crock original. So you don't want it like burning on you. You don't want burnt butter. You want brown butter. So probably gonna mix a little olive oil in there. Like I said, just help it along. Okay, let's go. Throw in a little sea salt. And yeah, while we are going to be putting some fresh cracked black peppercorns in there, we're going to do that towards the end, because you don't want to put them in there at the beginning of cooking. Same way with steak, anything like that, it's going to be cooking at a relatively high temperature, because these will burn. They're just like coffee beans. You know, you don't want burnt coffee beans. These want to be more or less toasted, so we're going to put these in closer to the end, so we don't have burnt pepper. Now, depending on your pan, depending on your potatoes, how big you cut them, the heat, that kind of stuff, it's going to take about maybe 10 minutes or so for these to soften up a bit. And as soon as they do, we're going to throw in the onions, let those get all happy in with the potatoes, put the garlic in last. They'll be on the way. Going down to the very edge of camp here to more or less get away from the sizzle that Leia do her business. I want to tell you about that little shield thingy, because I know somebody's going to ask about it, that's around the stove. And that's a little super cheap Amazon windscreen. Best thing I've ever bought in terms of cooking outside. I've traveled and hiked for years before we moved full-time on the road. I don't know why I never had one of those, because all it is little foldable accordion style windscreen. It works for open fires or on stoves like that, and it's wonderful. The wind is kicking actually pretty good here, pretty breezy, and you can just move that thing around your stove, move it around your fire. Works great with the little pocket rocket type, you know, backcountry stoves. Yeah, if you're going to cook outside at all, get you something like that. And they don't have to be expensive. Just get a cheap one. That one's been absolutely perfect. Let's check on them taters. So it's been about 10 minutes-ish. Potatoes are getting just slightly soft. We're going to stir them up a little bit and go ahead and toss in our onions. Not the garlic, not yet. Now, as Mr. Steve Wallace would say, time for step 2. So there's really no set time to let the onions go. Depends on how you like them. I'm not going to let them all the way caramelize, but I do want them to get kind of sweated, kind of translucent. I will mention this little Sea to Summit pan. Great pan, but it doesn't come with a lid. This would be where I would put the lid on there. It'll keep in a lot of that heat and make everything cook a lot faster. But like I said, I don't have one, so that's why I'm not using a lid. I mean, look at that. That is already one beautiful tater. By sheer guesstimation, I'm thinking we've got maybe 10 more minutes to go, this all together. So I'm going to put in the old garlic. Magic right there. Give that a little stir in. Like I said, we don't want this to burn. So from here on out, probably going to be giving that a little mix every 3 or 4 minutes or so. We've got about 5 minutes to go on this, I do believe. So let's talk about what else we're going to be adding into our little witch's brew. For sure, fresh cracked black peppercorns. And these 2 little guys right here are optional. Chili powder, paprika, very cheap. I think these are like 99 cents a piece. It just gives it a nice smoky flavor, little western flavor, a little chili flavor. So right here towards the end, we're going to add these just to taste. And then speaking of tasting, try your food. If you need some more salt, whatever, throw it in there about right now. And just to put a nice little sheen on everything, before we add our green onions, a little dollop of butter. We'll let that melt down. Get our chives chopped up. We'll be ready to plate. Folks, when you factor in roughly how much all this costs, I'd say it comes out to maybe $1, probably less depending on how much you actually buy. I had like 3 pounds of onions, 5 pounds of potatoes, of course the spices, the butter. I think all that together maybe cost $12 or $13-ish. Of course, it depends on where you are. So yeah, I would say that's a pretty safe bet that this cost about $1 roughly. And man, it is so good, so simple, best of the best. And the spectacular thing about stuff like this is it goes with everything. You can have this with meat, you can have it with fish, you can have it essentially as a vegetarian option as we are here, although I did cook it in a little bit of hamburger grease. And you can dress it up, dress it down. Throw some ground beef in here, you'll have kind of a hash thing. Throw some cabbage in there. Like I said, the possibilities are limitless. But hey, with potatoes, onions, garlic, butter, you really can't go wrong. Thanks for joining us, folks, from Leia and I, who really, now that I think about it, needs her little tater too. Good girl. Now, we can sign off. Take care, folks. Hope you enjoyed it.